Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just getting started. Welcome to our second workshop for the Prop Master's Dream, presented by Vancouver Cantonese Opera. This is part 2 of a 2-part series, and we're so happy to see you all. We're bringing you this event from Vancouver, BC, Canada, on the beautiful unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. This event is also presented by the Heart of the City Festival. My name is April Liu, and I'm an independent writer, producer, and Cantonese opera fan, and I'll be your event co-host today. Please note that we are filming today's event, and if for those who do not wish to be recorded, you can keep your cameras off throughout the presentation. So let's start. I'm joined here by the wonderful Rosa Chang, founder and artistic director of Vancouver Cantonese Opera, and I'll pass it over to Rosa now to kick off the event.
Hello， 大家好，歡迎各位參加今日溫哥華燕鳳鳴粵劇團嘅道具大師嘅尋根夢工作坊。今日拍檔咧主持有兩位，首先係 April Liu， 就係啱啱嗰個就係 April 啦。佢係一個獨立寫作家、影視監製，同埋都係粵劇嘅粉絲。仲有來自燕鳳鳴粵劇團嘅始創人同埋藝術總監就係我啦，應國鳳。首先，我謹向馬思坤、史窩米樹同埋塔里斯沃特斯嘅部族致謝，多謝佢哋俾我哋可以喺呢個美麗嘅原住民土地向各位現場直播工作坊嘅情況。請你哋留意，我哋將會全程拍攝今日嘅節目。如果閣下唔想被攝錄咧，可以關閉咗你嘅 Zoom 嘅相機。My name is Rosa Chang.And I'm the founder and artistic director of the Vancouver Cantonese Opera. Vancouver Cantonese Opera was incorporated in year 2000 as a non-profit society and was designated as a charitable organization in year 2005. Our mission is to preserve and promote the unique art form of Cantonese opera in Canada. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for their support.Canada Council for the Arts, Province of BC, BC Arts Council, City of Vancouver, Hamburg Foundation, and the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in Canada. 我本人咧就係燕鳳鳴粵劇團嘅始創人同埋藝術總監。燕鳳鳴係喺2000年註冊為非牟利劇團，同埋喺2005年咧獲得政府核准為慈善機構。我哋嘅使命咧就係要喺加拿大保留同埋推廣獨一無二嘅傳統粵劇藝術。藉此機會，我要多謝支持燕鳳鳴嘅各個贊助機構，佢哋就係加拿大藝術發展局、BC 省藝術發展局、BC 省政府、溫哥華市政府、Hamburg Foundation 同埋駐加拿大嘅香港經濟貿易辦事處。April. And also,As this event is part of the Heart of the City's Festival, I have the honor to introduce to you Savannah Walling, Artistic Director of Vancouver Moving Theatre and Associate Artistic Director of the Downtown East Side Heart of the City Festival. 因為我哋今日嘅工作坊咧係 Heart of Festival 嘅節目 ，Heart of the City 嘅 Festival 節目之一。咁我好榮幸咧邀請到 Savannah Walling。佢係藝術總監 Moving Theatre 嘅藝術Vancouver Moving Theatre 嘅藝術總監，同埋係Heart of the City 嘅 Associate Artistic Director。依家請Savannah 講幾句嘢。Savannah, would you please talk to our attendees and our audience?
Yes, I happily welcome you to the 18th annual Downtown East Side Heart of the City Festival, situated on these ancient homelands of the Coast Salish. My name is also Shahatsa, and I carry the Haida name of supporter of all things. Here in the Downtown East Side, we look at this as a whole historic district of all the neighborhoods and cultural communities that make up what we know of as the downtown east side, this area between Burrard Inlet and the False Creek Flats. And it's also made up of all the people who live, volunteer, work, have family, have ancestral traditions here in the downtown east side. We've really appreciated working with the Vancouver Cantonese Opera over the last 2 years on some really exciting projects. The Tale of the East Side Lantern, which is a rock opera in development with Sean Wong, son of James, and with the Cantonese Opera. And last year's The Art of Water Sleeves, a virtual opera party. And we're so very excited and really moved about this production that's based on the true life story of Wah Kwan Gwan, who was born of an Indigenous family and came to be part of the Cantonese opera world. So it's extremely exciting for us to see what is emerging here. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome to the festival.
Thank you so much, Savannah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So so our event actually takes part in it will take place in 3 parts today. So if we can get the next slide. First, we'll share some background on the new opera, The Prop Master's Dream, including a brief summary of the story. Second, we'll introduce the setting of the opera and look at historic photos of Cantonese opera in Vancouver's Chinatown. Third, we'll enjoy a short performance excerpt from Act 2, performed by Rosa Chang and Jackie Lam. And at the end, we'll workshop these ideas by asking you, our viewers, to share your feedback and questions. Please jot down your ideas as we go and save them for this discussion. You can also send your comments and questions via the chat window, and we'll answer them at the end. We're very keen on incorporating your feedback in the development of this opera.
今日嘅工作坊咧，我哋係分3部分進行嘅。首先咧，就向各位分享新派粵劇道具大師嘅尋根夢嘅若干背景資料啦，講述嘅故事嘅大概要啦，同埋創作嘅理念。其次咧，我哋就係介紹粵劇嘅設置，同埋睇下溫哥華唐人街粵劇嘅歷史照片。第三咧，我哋就係欣賞由林少琪同埋本人表演嘅第2幕一個好簡短嘅片段。咁我咧就歡迎各位觀眾咧發表意見，並且提出問題。喺研討會進行期間咧，將你哋想嘅想法啊，或者有咩問題要討論咧，記低，咁啊或者可以喺嗰個聊天框度寄送俾我哋，提出詢問，我哋好樂意聽大家嘅意見嘅。April。
So the Prop Master's Dream is inspired by the true life story of Mr. Wah Kwan Gwan, a legendary figure in Vancouver's Cantonese opera community. He was born in 1929 in a First Nations family in Vancouver and found abandoned in Vancouver's Chinatown. We do not know how or why he was abandoned, as he lost all contact with his birth family as a baby. He was adopted by a Chinese family that took him back to Guangdong, China. His adopted father was an opera scriptwriter for a Cantonese opera company based in Hoi Ping, and he grew up speaking Cantonese and Toisanese. Wah Kwan was also a Cantonese opera actor in China, before he went on to master the skills of backstage production, including set design, costume comportment, and prop making. In the 1950s, when Wah Kwan was a young man, he returned to Vancouver. Although he had returned to his birthplace, he faced the many challenges of an immigrant with limited English skills. However, he found support and employment in the Chinese community, where he worked on numerous Cantonese opera productions for over 40 years and taught his profound knowledge of the opera. He passed away at the age of 71 in the year 2000 at his home on the corner of East Hastings Street and Hawk Street, and that's right in the downtown east side. The Prop Master's Dream opera focuses on Wah Kwan's journey to find a sense of home and belonging. In the opera, he leaves his home and family in China and returns to Vancouver on a steamship with the hopes of finding his birth family. He is haunted by strange and wonderful dreams that lead his way. Although he never finds the answers he's looking for, he is transformed by his journey and his love for the opera. And he was also very close friends with Rosa, as you can see in the picture here.
道具大師嘅尋根夢咧，就係由源自關華坤先生嘅真實故事。 佢係溫哥華粵劇界嘅傳奇人物。我同華叔咧就好熟，所以我就喺呢度我稱佢為華叔啦。華叔咧就係1929年出生於溫哥華一個原住民家庭嘅，當時被發現遺棄喺溫哥華華埠。我哋唔知道佢遭遺棄嘅前因後果啦，但係出自娘胎咧就與親生家庭係失去聯絡嘅。後來由於佢被一個華裔嘅家庭收養咗，而帶咗翻去中國廣東開平。佢喺中國長大嘅，學會講得一口流利嘅廣東話同埋台山話。佢嘅養父咧係一名粵劇嘅撰曲人，為開平一個粵劇戲班撰曲。華叔喺粵劇圈子長大，耳濡目染之下咧，精通粵劇嘅唱做念打，更學會後台製作道具嘅技藝，包括佈景設計同埋道具製作。上世紀50年代咧，華叔重返溫哥華，雖然話翻到自己嘅出生地，但係佢對英文咧，其實一開頭係一竅不通，但慢慢咧都係只係識得啲皮毛，咁咧變咗咧不得不面臨作為新移民嘅諸多挑戰啦。後來佢喺華人社團度揾到啲工作同埋佢做過好多種工作嘅，多年來咧都做到。但係咧，因為佢嘅熱愛咧就係粵劇，所以咧佢都好多時係幫啲社團做粵劇製作。後來咧，佢咧就以長輩嘅身份咧，就傳授好多粵劇嘅豐富知識俾我哋嘅下一輩啦，即係好似我哋咁啦。我先生都係跟華叔學好多嘢啦。咁華叔咧就喺2000年喺佢喜事定東街居所逝世嘅，享年係71歲。道具大師嘅尋根夢咧，係專注於華叔尋找家人同埋歸屬感嘅旅程。喺粵劇嘅情節中咧，佢離開咗中國嘅家鄉同埋親人，乘輪船返溫哥華，希望能夠找到佢嘅親人。但係佢一路喺呢個古仔裏面咧，佢都一路俾奇怪嘅夢同埋嘅美妙嘅夢所困擾嘅。雖然佢從來都揾唔到佢需要嘅答案。但係呢個旅程對於粵劇熱愛改變咗佢嘅一生。Next slide, please.
Let's go on a journey back in time. The Prop Master's Dream is a story that takes place in Vancouver's historic Chinatown, where Cantonese opera thrived as the cultural heart of the community. As we study the history and as we're building the look and feel of the opera, the set design, and the characters, we've been studying these historic photos, especially of opera theaters and opera troupes in historic Chinatown, including the ones that Wah Kwan might have worked in. So we're kind of trying to imagine what was his world like when he was born in Vancouver and when he returned as well. This is one of the earliest pictures related to Cantonese opera in Vancouver. It's an image from 1907 taken in Shanghai Alley in the year 1907, right after the anti-Asian race riots of that year. The windows have been boarded up to cover up the smashed glass. And you can see on the left corner of the image a sign that says opera upstairs in Chinese. And it's all the way there on the left column, it's just barely readable. And also you can see on the balcony, the upper balcony, there's a figure standing there. And it looks like this figure may be wearing opera costume, judging from the headdress there. We believe this is the site of the old Sing Q Theater, Cantonese Opera Theater in Chinatown.
現在咧，等我帶大家咧搭上時光隧道，翻去唐人街。道具大師尋根夢咧，係發生喺溫哥華歷史悠久嘅唐人街嘅故事。其實當時咧，粵劇咧喺當時嘅社會嚟講咧，係好蓬勃嘅，而係我哋中國人主要嘅消遣之一。因為當時係冇電視又冇話手機嗰啲。咁所以我哋就將啲照片俾大家一齊分享啦。咁咧可能咧有幾個劇院咧，華叔咧都幫手過喺後台佈置嘅。嗱，呢一張相咧就係1907年喺上海胡同 Shanghai Alley 拍嘅照片。咁咧嗰時咧就係1907年，係當年係有反亞裔騷亂之後嘅，所以你睇到啲窗門啲門都用板封起嚟啊。啲玻璃都俾打爛咗， 咁你可以睇到咧，喺呢幅相嘅左下角，你見到一個白色嗱，你見到一個叫做華益嗰個字嘅華字咧，過嚟呢邊咧又見到啦，戲院樓上劇院啊，樓上劇院就喺個左下角嘅。咁然後咧，你望斜地望上咧，你見到一個人企喺個嘅騎樓，我哋叫騎樓啦。咁咧就可能嗰個就係劇院啦。咁可能嗰個就係演員之一啦，企喺個騎樓度睇下風景或者睇下街啦。Okay, next slide, please.
As Rosa was mentioning that without TV and radio, back then the opera was the main form of entertainment in Chinatown. That's definitely true. This is another image of the same alley, Shanghai Alley, from the later years. So the black and white image on the left is from 1944, and the undated one on the right is closer to how it appears today. So you can see they're quite similar. So if you're walking around Chinatown, you can get a glimpse of this, the historic world that Wah Kwan lived in.
呢一張相咧就係後期上海胡同嘅景色，左邊嗰個黑白嘅圖咧就係1944年拍攝嘅，右邊咧就係近期拍攝嘅。其實呢一座大廈咧可以話係好似話係最窄嘅大廈之一喎，即係最窄嘅建築物啊，係好窄嘅咁咧就係你睇到咧冇乜改變啊，除咗嗰個建築物嘅後邊咧。就好似拆咗起咗嗰啲新嘅樓宇之外咧，前面係冇改變嘅。Next slide, please.
Now in Shanghai Alley, where we believe Xingqiu Theater was located, we have some images from the 1930s. This one is from 1935. It's an image of opera performers standing backstage in Xingqiu Theater. For our opera, many of the scenes actually take place backstage. So these images are really useful for us to study. Here you see a female performer in beautiful costume standing with a man holding a baby. Images like these really show us that the backstage of the opera theater was a gathering place for performers, for family members, and friends.
呢一張相咧就係1935年拍攝嘅，咁可能咧就係喺醒橋劇院後台影嘅。咁你睇到咧相中咧有個花旦咧化晒妝噶啦，着晒戲服噶啦，等住出場。咁咧就有個男人抱住個 BB 喺佢身邊，咁可能咧就係佢嘅個 BB， 可能係佢個 BB 啦，係個仔啦或者女啦。咁咧其實咧我哋喺演出嘅時候咧，好多人嚟探班嘅，探班即係你演出嚟，佢哋去後台探你，咁啊係常見嘅事嘅。你啲親戚啊朋友又個個都好中意入嚟探班，原來以前都係一樣，冇分別。Next slide, please.
Yes, Rosa also brings her grandson backstage these days, so things haven't changed that much. Here's another 1935 image from the backstage of Xingqiu Theater. Most likely, we think that's the Xingqiu Theater. It shows a stagehand pulling on the ropes that drop down the different painted stage dressings. If you look on the wall there, the labels in calligraphy indicate which scenes go with which ropes. And this is likely one of the many tasks that Wah Kwan would have performed backstage during the 1950s and onward.
呢一張相咧係1935年影嘅，咁咧就可能又係醒橋戲院嘅後台啦。咁你可以睇到咧，呢個舞台工作人員咧拉住嗰啲佈景嘅繩啊，嗰啲大畫布咧係好大張嘅，成個舞台咁闊啊，高咧由舞台底去到舞台頂。咁佢哋咧就係用繩拉上去，然後咧就會翹實，等佢唔會跌落嚟啦。但每一場換景咧，呢啲工作人員咧就會，譬如你話下一場我哋係山林景，咁佢就喺度睇到啦，話山林景，咁我揾到嗰條繩之後咧，就慢慢將個繩由個景咧由上嗰個舞台頂慢慢吊放落嚟。咁但係就然後咧，譬如你啱啱做完嗰場咧，嗰個景咧佢就會慢慢又捲翻上去，擺翻喺舞台頂嘅。呢個就係冇變過喎，1935年同埋依家嘅程序一樣嘅啫，喺米高霍士都係咁。Next slide, please.
Rosa was just adding there that that technique is still used today for pulling down the scene dressings and then pulling them back up with rolling them back up with rope.
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting image. It's a blueprint image of the Xingqiu Theater at 544 Shanghai Alley in Vancouver's Chinatown. The Xingqiu Theater was the first Chinese theater established in Chinatown by the Xingqiu Dramatic Society in 1898. That's very early. And Xingqiu, the name, actually means awakening of the overseas Chinese. So it's a name that really captures the pride of the Chinatown community. As you can see here, it had a large capacity of 500 seats, and it was likely the largest public space in Chinatown. Here's a construction blueprint of the lower seating area that was created when the space was being renovated during the 1910s. Unfortunately, the theater burned down in 1947.
醒橋戲院咧，其實咧係由醒橋戲劇社喺1898年喺溫哥華唐人街上海胡同544號建成嘅。咁成立咗之後咧，係第一個中國嘅劇院，佢哋命名為醒橋劇院。醒橋嘅意思咧就係話喚醒海外嘅華僑，所以咧呢個醒橋嘅名字咧成為唐人街當時一個即係好驕傲嘅名詞嚟嘅。佢咧有500個座位，當時咧係應該係唐人街或者溫哥華唐人嘅聚集點嚟㗎。據我所知咧，嗰時孫中山先生嚟到溫哥華籌款抗清嗰時咧，都係喺醒橋戲院做過嘅。咁呢個係呢一幅畫咧，就係1910年醒橋戲院再裝修嘅時候咧，就起咗一個較少座位嘅區域嘅藍圖。但係咧好不幸咧，戲院咧喺1947年咧被燒毀咗啦。Next slide, please.
Now, the Xingqiu was not the only theater. We'll show you just a couple of pictures of a few others. By the 1920s and 30s, there were several major Chinatown theaters specializing in Cantonese opera in Vancouver. Here's the renovation blueprint for the Kosing Theater on East Pender Street.
喺1920年代至到1930年代咧，溫哥華唐人街咧唔係淨係得醒橋戲院一間嘅，都有幾間戲院嘅，專門經營粵劇。你話嗰時咁多粵劇大戲做幾好咧？嗬！如果我哋而家都好似咁就好啦。呢個咧就係位於片打東街嘅高升劇院嘅翻新嘅藍圖啦。Next slide, please.
And here's one more example of a blueprint for the Singping Theater on Columbia Street. You can see that all of these theaters were designed to welcome large audiences. During the early 20th century, there were often weekly or even daily performances of Cantonese opera in Vancouver. So it was a very vibrant art form. Although the Exclusion Act was passed in 1923, intended to prevent Chinese immigration, opera troupes were able to continue entering Canada as temporary visitors. However, the hosts had to pay a bond of $500 for each actor entering into Canada, a very large sum at the time, and it would only be returned when the actors went back to China.
呢一幅咧就係哥倫比亞街升平劇院嘅藍圖，你可以睇到嗰時嘅戲院咧都係都幾大下㗎，幾百位㗎。咁咧即係話有好多觀眾睇啦。就喺1910年代至到1920年代咧，粵劇咧經常咧就係每一個禮拜都有，甚至每一日都有演出嘅。雖然嗰時加拿大嘅排除法，即係話佢哋排除唔準中國人嚟咧，係喺1923年通過嘅。但係粵劇團如果要嚟咧，都可以攞到臨時嘅 visa 嚟，但係咧每一個人入到嚟咧就要主持人即係嗰個班主啊，每個班主要俾500蚊一個人嘅保證金。咁你諗下一個團嚟到溫哥華演出，唔係一個人得噶嘛，係咪？可能10幾20個。咁如果你20個就成500蚊美金一個，而係1920年嗰個時候喎，咁你下幾多錢？當然呢一大筆錢咧，如果啲演員翻中國時候咧，就會退翻噶啦。Next slide, please.
Now we know that Wah Kwan was particularly active with the Jinghua Sing opera troupe during the 1950s and onward. And we found an amazing collection of early Jinghua Sing photographs from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Now, these are held at the UBC library, and they're very small images, even though we blew them up here. They're only about the size of a stamp, so very precious. This image here is likely from the 1930s, and it shows Jinghua Sing's first location in Chinatown. Jinghua Sing is likely the oldest continuously operating opera troupe in North America. It was established in 1934 by the Chinese Freemasons.
我知道啊，華叔咧喺1950年代以後咧，好多時候咧都係幫唐人街嗰啲粵劇社嘅，好似振華星啊、青韻啊咁樣。咁啊，振華星咧就係粵劇團中特別活躍㗎啦。呢張相咧就係1930年代或者40年啦，或者50年代早期特別收藏到嘅振華星嘅照片，係阿 April 咧喺 UBC 個 library 嘅檔案中揾到嘅。而呢一張相其實咧好細嘅，好似一個郵票咁大嘅啫。咁咧，但係咧佢又將佢放大咗。咁咧喺呢度咧，你可能係1930年代咧顯示咗振華星喺唐人街第一個位置，即係第一個佢哋嘅社嘅地址啦，嘅會址啦。咁振華星咧係可能係北美成立最長久嘅粵劇音樂社，由中國共濟會咧喺1934年成立嘅。Next slide.
So we'll show you now 7 of these small images that we found, all from the Jinghua Sing collection. This is of a male actor sitting on a scene which is constructed as a bed. And so you can see that the embroidered silk there, it's a canopy for the bed, and he's sitting inside the bed. And when we looked closer at it, we saw that the 3 characters in the middle on those round forms is actually the actor's name, Gui Mingyang, a famous actor who was quite active in the early 20th century.
Yeah. 嗱，呢一張相咧又係好寶貴嘅。你睇到呢個演員呢個老官，呢個老官咧就係好出名嘅桂明陽老官啊，佢咧就係坐喺一張我哋行外話呢張叫做大帳。大帳咧其實就係舞台上嘅床，但係呢張床咧就係有個帳嘅，有個帳嘅，即係好似你有時啲床都有個 canopy， 佢呢個咧就有個帳。咁瞓覺嗰時咧個帳咧就會閂埋。但係如果你唔瞓覺咧，佢就會揦起個帳，咁佢就坐喺個帳個大帳裏下低。咁佢個名咧有3個圓圈嘅，嗰上面咧就瘦咗，中間就係個姓桂，然後咧明咧就係右邊，陽咧就左邊，所以桂明陽一個品字咁樣3角嘅，呢個就係好出名嘅大老官桂明陽。Next slide.
So you can see the actors had their own personalized props if they were quite well known, and props were very important to the opera. Here's a female performer holding a prop of a paddle, as if she's miming the action of paddling, as if paddling in a lake.
呢一張相咧，我哋見到個花旦咧，佢揸住一個好似係船槳啊。咁咧就我哋喺舞台上咧，好多時都係用啲抽象嘅抽象，但係揸住用道具咧就可以表現到你想做乜嘢。譬如我哋騎馬，我哋揸住支馬鞭啦，咁佢揸住一個咧就係船槳，咁就即係話俾佢聽，佢而家喺度撐緊船。咁其實我哋粵劇都好多劇咧係有咁嘅情形嘅，譬如五湖泛舟啦，西施同埋范麗嘅五湖泛舟咧，就又會有演員喺台上揸住個船槳喺度撐船啦。呢個就係呢個花旦可能係做緊撐船嘅動作。Next one.
Now, a prop master also was in charge of the set design and the set pieces. So if you see here, there were multiple layers of scene dressings in silk, and the background you can see it's painted. You can see there in the corner there's some windows, elements of architecture. What's fascinating from this period is that there was a mixing of Chinese and European elements in the design.
Okay, so this photo is with 2 actors in the front, and when you watch up there, you can see layers of the backdrop of the scenery. And then the costume they're wearing is the guy is wearing what we call. Anyway, all the costume very elaborate. Yeah.
Can you say that in Cantonese, please, Rosa?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, can we go back again? Yeah, should have told me. Okay, 嗱呢一張相咧就係2個演員喺台中，咁咧中間呢個男嘅咧，佢着住嗰套叫做 京裝，京裝即係嗰啲鞋着嘅，咁佢戴住頂蓮子帽，咁蓮子帽咧就通常都拉低啲嘅，先拉低。咁個花旦咧就着，我見到佢好似戴咗條毛毛喺個頭度，可能係番邦女仔嚟嘅。咁咧你會睇到望住個舞台頂，你見到一層層咧就係佢哋嗰啲畫布啦，畫布掛起咗嘅。咁邊一場嘅景咧，就會將個畫布放落去；邊一場嘅景即係佢拉翻上去，係啦。呢個就係舞台景之一。
Now you can see the whole scene and how elaborate these scene dressings were. The large painting in the middle actually shows the whole architectural space with a dome, with walls, with windows, and it's done in actually quite a European style, like a Parisian neoclassical palace. On the left there, you can see another curtain there in the corner. This is a curtain that where the actors would enter through, would actually come onto the stage. And looking at the costumes here, it looks like there's different officials sitting here for an important meeting, officials of different ranks. And oh, there's also a man hidden in the middle wearing regular clothes. He's actually a stagehand who's not, the audience can't see him because he's behind that, that fabric curtain there. But the photographers seem to capture him there. So it's quite interesting. We can see the behind the scenes in this image as well.
呢一幅相咧就係影舞台嘅，咁你會見到咧舞台上邊咧就嗰個佈景咧就有啲好似歐美嘅色彩喺度嘅，咁同埋咧佢兩邊咧就你會見到一個叫輔導門啦，就係上場用嘅叫輔導門，咁好特別咧，輔導門兩邊咧都掛咗隻叫做金利園啊，可能佢哋嘅贊助商啊，金利園。兩邊都寫咗金利園個名嘅，咁啲演員就喺嗰度出場噶啦。咁咧喺呢個舞台上，你會見到有張大地氈啊，嗰啲演員咧就企喺個大地氈上做戲嘅。咁點解我哋要擺塊地氈喺度咧？我哋佢哋叫地毯，因為通常男演員咧都着高靴㗎，咁佢哋着住高靴咧就會好跣嘅。咁如果佢哋冇個地氈咧，就會容易跌親。所以咧，通常我哋個演區咧就喺塊地氈上邊嘅。你哋第日嚟睇大戲，你留意下，我哋一定有張地氈喺度噶。咁原來咧喺呢個舞台上咧就有4個人，有5個人啦。咁中間嗰個白鬚嗰個咧就顯然係主人，嗰個另外對住嗰個女人咧就可能佢嘅夫人，同埋咧隔離呢2個咧就係啲客人啦。咁通常我哋喺舞台上有大細位嘅，大位就中間。但係大位嘅中間嘅，你哋觀眾望住嘅右手邊咧就係最大個位，然後左手邊，然後第2行咧就係譬如嗰個客人係高貴啲嘅身份咧，就坐喺右手邊，咁然後另外一個就坐左手邊啦，就係咁樣分大細嘅。咁仲有一個梅香企喺度啦。咁你喺後邊，你見到有個着住時裝嘅男人，點解會企喺度咧？唔啱襯喎。其實佢咧就係舞台嘅工作人員。咁佢裝出嚟，其實咧就唔應該裝出嚟嘅，但係俾我哋個攝影師拍咗佢出嚟。OK， 我哋可以講呢個係 blooper 啦。OK， so next slide.
Well, I really love this image because it shows how a Cantonese opera, theater setting is quite different from a Western one. Here you can see that the musicians are actually on the stage with the performers. You can see them sitting there on the left with their instruments and their music sheets. And this is actually typical of Cantonese opera. But when the opera moved into Western style theaters, the musicians moved into the music pit on the lower level. So this is wonderful to see in this historic image.
嗱，呢一張相咧就係傳統粵劇嘅舞台嘅佈置啊。演員上場出場咧就係喺我哋叫做閘邊啊，閘邊即係如果你係觀眾咧，你望上住個舞台係左手邊，咁啲音樂師傅啊、鑼鼓師傅就其實坐晒嗰邊嘅，咁然後啲演員就經過佢哋出場。點解佢哋會喺嗰邊咧？有特別嘅原因嘅，因為咧嗰邊咧係演員出場嘅，咁佢哋會知道演員幾時出場，幾時開始打鑼鼓，幾時開始玩音樂。但係因為我哋依家現在咧現時嘅戲院咧，好多時因為呢度譬如尤其是喺溫哥華嘅劇場唔係特別為做粵劇嘅，所以我哋嗰 即係好簡單，譬如我哋喺米高霍士咧，佢個輔導門咧就好細好窄嘅，係唔可以擺得到多餘嘅，譬如但成隊樂隊擺嗰度係唔得嘅。所以咧，我哋就唯有用佢下低個音樂池啦。我哋另外有個選擇係可以擺喺另外對面嗰個輔導門嗰邊，但係太遠啦，因為啲演員出場，佢啲師傅冇辦法同啲師傅聯絡，所以咧，就算我哋依家佢哋喺音樂池咧，我哋都冇辦法同佢聯絡幾時開場。咁我哋咧通常咧，我哋嗰個舞台嘅經理即係監督咧，就會用個電筒咧，就嚟開場咧，就要電筒照下佢哋，咁佢哋知道哦開場啦，咁佢就開始玩音樂打鑼鼓啦。咁呢度咧就係個舞台就係咁，咁即係變咗方便啲演員出入場同啲師傅有溝通。Next slide.
Rosa was just explaining there that the musicians are on the stage so they can see what's happening and improvise the music to go along with the performers, and they can see them arriving through that curtain. But nowadays, since they're separated, they have to figure out another way to communicate, such as flashing a flashlight to let the musicians know the performers are coming. So this is from 1940, and this shows a female performer, and she's actually doing a sword dance here in a garden setting. And you can see her arm is stretched out. The sword is actually hidden underneath her arm in this move, but you can see the handle there by her hand. And you can see the beautiful painted backdrops. They're getting more and more elaborate now. It's the 1950s. It's a beautiful garden with lotus blossoms.
嗱，呢一張相咧就係呢個花旦咧係其實係跳緊一個劍舞嘅。你睇到佢隻左手咧係伸直啦，但係你睇到嗰個劍柄咧係喺個手呢度突咗出嚟嘅。咁呢個就係佢，你會睇到個劍柄，佢係跳緊一個劍舞嘅。咁佢個背景咧就係花園，即係話佢喺花園就跳緊個劍舞啦。Next one.
In this next image from 1951, we see two performers. They're both carrying spears and they're engaged in battle on stage. So martial arts was a big part of Cantonese opera and still is. And we think that this is a scene from the opera Lo Gum Ding, and it's about a female general. And there you can see the female, she has the two pheasant tails in her headdress, and she's wearing the costume indicating she's in armor, and she has her foot stepped forward and she's facing us. That's the female figure, and then closer to us, his back facing us, is the male fighter, not wearing armor, but dressed as a casual fighter. And in the story, they actually fall in love at first sight on the battlefield. And then behind the female figure there by the exit curtain, you can see some boxes stacked up and some items there. That's where the troops would have kept their costumes.
呢一張相咧就係一個男嘅同埋一個女嘅預備打交，咁咧就係其實咧我哋喺舞台上都好多呢啲咁嘅情節啊，譬如好似穆桂英招親啊、劉金鼎招親啊，咁通常都係個女人打贏個男人嘅喎，咁然後咧就招咗佢哋做老公，咁咧就你睇到咧呢個女演員咧個頭上係有個瓷雞尾嘅一對瓷雞尾，咁咧就係着住個小扣。咁就係出征嘅模樣啦。但係呢套係小扣，如果我哋係着大扣咧，大扣就通常有4個背旗嘅，咁佢冇背旗嘅，我哋就叫做小扣啦。咁呢個男演員咧就都揸住個雙頭槍，咁咧就係着住套好似係坐馬咁嘅打，即係都係坐馬嗰啲衫都係冇搶用嘅。咁你另外就睇到呢度有一個輔導門啦。呢個輔導門咧就喺舞台嘅，你哋觀眾望咧就係右手邊，佢叫做輔導門，但係我哋叫做下場門，即係佢哋做完咧就喺呢度入翻場，入翻去後台嘅叫做下場門。咁你又見到好多一箱箱嘢擺咗喺度，咁一箱箱嗰啲咧係佢哋嘅戲服箱嚟嘅衣箱。咁所以咧我哋喺舞台上咧，喺你哋觀眾望住嘅右手邊咧，我哋叫做衣邊。觀眾望住嘅左手邊，我哋個閘邊，閘邊就係佢哋擺嗰啲道具啊、背景啊嗰啲箱咧，就擺嗰邊，所以我哋叫做閘邊，呢邊叫衣邊啦。係 next one.
So that's the series of images we have from Jinghua Sing, and you can see that props play a really important role. And the prop maker would have had to know how to help build the props, and he had to know all the stories and characters really well to know which props go with which performers. So the prop maker's role is very important. Now we'd like to share a few images of historic neighborhoods surrounding Chinatown, where Wah Kwan would have spent his time. Here's a couple of images from Hogan's Alley, another vibrant neighborhood where music played a really key role. Known for its jazz and blues clubs, Hogan's Alley was home to Vancouver's Black population. Cantonese opera troupes of the 1930s and 40s and onward were influenced by these musical trends, and they even incorporated guitar, saxophone, and conga drums into their performances. Hogan's Alley was the popular name for Park Lane in Strathcona. 50 years ago, the construction of the Georgia and Dunsmuir viaducts displaced this community.
因為阿華叔咧，佢係返到溫哥華之後咧，係長期都係喺溫哥華嘅唐人街居住嘅。咁佢咧就喺咗個唐人街嘅區域咧度過去好多嘅時光。咁我哋特別咧就睇到呢個 Hogan's Alley， 即係佢叫做霍根小巷啦，小巷幾張相。呢個 Hogan's Alley 咧係一個充滿活力嘅區域，而係咧又係充滿音樂嘅區域嚟嘅，發揮咗好多關鍵嘅作用。咁同埋呢一個 Hogan's Alley 咧就係以爵士音樂啊，同埋 Blue 藍調俱樂部而聞名嘅，而又係溫哥華黑人人口嘅家園。喺1930年代咧，至到1940年代咧，我哋嘅粵劇咧受到呢啲音樂嘅潮流影響啊，甚至咧我哋會加入吉他或者 saxophone 或者 conga drums。咁其實咧我哋粵劇咧係一個中國一個 regional opera 一個地區嘅opera 啦，但係咧粵劇有個特性咧就係好中意見到乜嘢好嘅咧，佢哋就會加埋入嚟用，會入去我哋嘅粵劇度裏面嘅。所以你到現在為止，我哋嘅粵劇咧有大提琴，有 saxophone 嚇，咁以前仲有嗰啲叫做 I forgot the name anyway，but 即係我哋好嘅嘢咧，我哋就會加入嚟嘅。等我哋嘅粵劇咧更多色彩。咁呢個 Hogan's Alley 咧就係喺Union 同埋 Pryor 街之間，大約係 Main 街同埋到 Jackson Avenue 啦。咁但係好不幸咧，50年前咧，因為建設呢個 Georgia 同埋 Dunsmuir 嘅 Viaduct 咧，呢個 Hogan's Alley 咧就冇咗啦，消失咗啦。Next.
So Wah Kwan himself lived in a rooming house on 404 Hawk Street. Now that's right on the corner of East Hastings, and it's at the edge of Strathcona and the downtown east side. Here's an image of the building he lived in. It's a 4-story commercial building known as the Rice Block. Now it's a heritage building. It was built in 1912 as part of Vancouver's building boom, and it's an Edwardian mixed-use rooming house, typical of a number of such buildings that were constructed on East Hastings Street.
阿華叔咧，佢係住喺404 Hawk Street 嘅，喺一間好似宿舍咁，專係租俾即係政府差唔多政府幫手俾錢啊，租俾佢哋嘅。咁就喺 Strathcona 同埋市區東區嘅邊緣。呢一座4層高嘅愛德華時代嘅商業建築物咧，就被稱為 Rice Block， 係1912年建成嘅。當時溫哥華建築熱潮嘅一部分咧，呢一座咧就係愛德華嘅混合用途嘅分租房，係喺喜事定東街嗰度建起嘅，係當時典型嘅代表。Next.
Now we're very lucky to have met Wah Kwan's landlord, who is still Rosa's friend, and we're still in contact with him. His name is Philip Cheng. He was Wah Kwan's former landlord at the Rice Block building that we just saw. Philip is a business owner and property manager who taught martial arts in Chinatown, and he was actually introduced to Cantonese opera by Wah Kwan himself. Philip also helped out backstage with various opera productions and worked alongside Wah Kwan, and that's how they became good friends.
跟住落嚟咧，我哋係想介紹俾各位認識阿華叔嘅房東啊。咁啊，華叔喺阿 Philip 嗰個 Rice Block 嗰度租住嗰間房， 咁 Philip 咧係一位商人同埋物業經理啦。咁佢喺溫哥華咧開設咗一間武館教授詠春嘅。後來經過華叔而認識粵劇。咁當時燕鳳鳴粵劇團有演出咧，阿華叔一定嚟幫手噶啦。咁有一次咧 ，Philip 咧就跟住華叔嚟，所以咧我哋就到依家都係成為好朋友。請你哋欣賞。Please show this video.
Yeah, it's just a short 3-minute video.
都係6年我做緊啦。
哦，即係大概
1994到啦，係啦，94佢住喺我度，我就認識咗佢啦。
嗰時華叔1994年，佢差唔多係60幾歲噶啦。
係啊，都好大年紀噶啦。咁但係佢一出聲就嚇我一跳啦。點解呢個人講台山話、講廣東話嘅咁樣？咁我將我個觀感咧就改變咗。咁我就同佢傾講廣東話。咁然後我先都好啦，租俾佢啦。咁樣開始認識咗佢咁樣嘅。
咁你覺得佢個人係咪好容易相處啊？即係你覺得佢個人點咧？
佢個人啊，真係你講得好啱啊！佢好容易相處，但係睇佢個人個表面咧就唔係好容易相處。但係你識落去咧，佢個人咧就好 nice 㗎，好容易相處㗎。
係咁樣佢咁好，即係佢好好人嘅。咁唔會話走去同人嗌交啊？
唔會嘅，
唔會嘅，
唔會嘅。
係咧，因為我識阿華叔嗰時咧，喺振華星嗰時咧，都係㗎，同佢傾偈都係咪咪嘴笑嘅。係啊，
佢個人都好 nice 㗎，都
好唔會話鬧人啊嗰啲。
佢講俾我聽咧，佢都喺溫哥華做過好多行㗎，好似我咁做過好多。我記得佢曾經同我講過，又做過魚濕，即係魚廠啦，湯魚啦，係啦，又做過木廠啦，即係嗰啲木廠啦，係嘛？即係佢做過好多行，又做洗衣鋪啊，又做即係做酒樓嘅廚房啊咁樣，即係做過好多，即係比較點講啊，係低下層嘅工嚟㗎。
佢唔識英文㗎喎。
係啊，佢就係佢弊在英文唔叻。佢如果你講話佢唔識，真係完全唔識，但係佢都可以咁多年啦。我識佢嗰陣時咧，都可以講得下啦咁樣。但係識寫啊、睇啊嗰方面真係唔得啦。我開工講笑咩？你開咩工啊？咁啊，你去啦。過多個零月，佢又話：阿菲力話我去開工啊咁樣。咁我梗係唔信佢啦。我又好奇你開咩工啊咁樣。佢話我去做大戲咯咁樣。我話你去做大戲係啦。
咁啊，華叔咧，即係咁話，即係話逢親唐人街有戲做，都揾華叔幫手㗎啦。
真係90%㗎。
即係其實我係咪你覺唔覺得華叔其實就係識得嘢最多咧？佢係咪教有冇係咪教好多人？
但係我知道佢係對粵劇嗰方面係好有心得㗎。比起一個點樣啊，普通一個做粵劇嘅人，佢係知道好多嘢㗎。即係
其實喺溫哥華嚟講咧，佢係屬於係前輩嚟㗎啦。
肯定係前輩啦。因為佢成日去振華星嘅，佢又冇頂一得閒就去㗎啦。所以佢嗰個粵劇個心得係好深好深㗎。咁點解佢做手啊乜都識拿出嚟就可以做，就係咁解咯。
Thank you, Philip. I know Philip is here with us today, so thank you so much for sharing some of your stories and your experiences and memories of Wah Kwan.
多謝 Philip，我知道 Philip 喺今日有嚟嘅，多謝你俾我機會，我哋知道更多關於華叔嘅嘢，多謝。
All right, now we'd like to share the highlight of our event, a performance by the two main characters, Rosa Chang and Jackie Lam. They will perform a short excerpt from Act 2, and the setting for this scene is the backstage of a Chinese theater in China. Wah Kwan has just turned 18, and he's sharing his desire to leave home in search of answers about his past. In this performance, Rosa will sing the part of Phoenix, the mother, and Jackie will sing the part of Wah Kwan. Now, this is just a work in progress, and it's a performance that it's not in a theater, but just as part of you'll see it in a rehearsal setting.
依家咧，我就同大家分享道具大師尋根夢嘅第二場一段小片段。呢一幕嘅背景咧就係中國一間劇院嘅後台。華坤咧啱啱滿18歲，啱啱去喺媽媽度知道自己嘅身世，咁佢希望離家尋找親生父母。喺呢一場演出裏面咧，我本人就飾演鳳凰。鳳凰係華坤嘅媽媽。咁Jackie Lam 林少琪咧就會飾演華坤啦。咁呢個係第二場嘅一個小小嘅片段，希望各位會歡喜啦。
娘親，
坤兒，哎呀，你做乜叫得咁大聲啊？
娘親，有啲事我唔明白。
有啲乜嘢事你唔明白呢？
其實由細到大，我都察覺到自己同其他小朋友唔同嘅。
有啲乜嘢唔同啊？
遊客膚色能辨別，同諧笑惡像攤路。班主說我貌不同，還望親娘來相告。
傻仔嚟嘅，我哋邊度有嘢瞞住你呢？
娘親，你唔使再咁呃我啦。你的心意我知道，當中真相盼相告，不明言，不透露，其中事說分毫，說分毫，恍如迷霧，我心更粗。
唉，坤兒，其實呢件事都應該同你講清楚噶啦。
娘親，究竟係乜嘢事？你同阿爹點解要瞞住我？
坤兒，你今年剛剛滿18歲，娘親先問你一句啦。18年來，你阿爹同娘親待你如何啊？
爹娘待我恩如山重，華坤今生難以報答。娘親，你講啦，你講啊！
坤兒，如果要講呢件事，就要由18年前講起噶啦。嗱，你聽我講啦。當年到北美之行，你父母隨團而往，演其場3月， 你真正嘅身世係加拿大原住民嚟㗎，呢個就係我哋一直冇同你講嘅事啦。
嚇！你行開啲！
坤兒，你做乜嘢啊？
我唔係你親生嘅，我係加拿大原住民，我唔係中國人。賢良父母是冤是憤是偏是愛高，追憶往事，愛心有佢路，教養人須報，
無用報情未老，
因心我父母相氣不相告，掩飾身世令我不知道，
求良書似母，
不知才對，念到也在忍於義，讓知情更高。親生拋棄子，若非佢愛惜，已經棄絕埋歸道。華坤受困難斷你好，願故。
坤兒，你親生父母棄你如敝履，你又何必記掛呢？所謂生母不及養娘大，我同你阿爹先至係你真正嘅父母啊！
唔係咁嘅，唔係咁嘅。養娘須養母，教兒須養父， 怕親母念愛子，已經血淚無，曾為我遍找世上無，關山找光壁邊連父母。撫養雖好，因後天高，今生望報心記，親自走遍天涯，唯盼再逢陌路。盼親生父母親，可再到。
做乜嘢啊？你唔好走啊！你唔好走！你唔好走啊！芬兒，走咗，佢走咗。
Before we go to the discussion, I thought a good way to kick off our Q&A and our discussion with the audience is to maybe first invite, we have our wonderful consultant and supporter and mentor, Dr. Charles Barber is here with us today. He's the conductor and artistic director of City Opera Vancouver. And Charles, if you're there, would you like to share a little bit of your initial impressions from our presentation today?
Okay, let me translate it in Chinese first.
Yes, thank you, Rosa.
希望各位歡喜頭先我哋分享嘅片段啦。咁依家咧，我哋好榮幸咧得到Dr. Charles Barbara 嚟睇我哋嘅workshop 啦，同埋咧 Dr. Charles Barbara 啦係我哋嘅 advisor， 即係我哋好多嘢都係要問叫Dr. Barbara 指點下咁樣。呢個我等我哋歡迎Dr. Charles Barbara。
Good afternoon, and thank you for putting this on air, and thank you for inviting me to share the air. As you know, I have no expertise in Cantonese opera at all. I have had the pleasure of going to a number of Vancouver Cantonese Opera productions, all of them at the Michael J. Fox. And I went on one occasion to a makeup event that you did, Rosa, out at a community center in the Southlands, way out on Victoria or Fraser or somewhere out there, long ago. Our connection with your wonderful company goes back to 2005, when City Opera was attempting to save and to restore the Pantages Theatre at Hastings and Maine. Yeah. Another of the theaters in that district 100 years ago, as the beginning of your presentation showed so admirably. And it was wonderful to see some of those photos. I had never seen those. Those drawings were new to me. We had invited Vancouver Cantonese Opera to be one of the resident companies with us. Were we able to save the Pantages Theatre, which was the last theater in that chain in Vancouver. And the oldest theatre in Western Canada. Alas, although we tried mightily for 4 years, we failed. And so City Opera now exists, but rather like Van Can Opera, we're gypsies and we go where people will have us. One of the things that I really admire about the ambition and the point of view and the emotional power of the story you want to tell through Prop Master's Dream is how beautifully it connects to the history of our Chinatown, but no less beautifully how it projects into the future of an art form that is still alive. And by creating a new work within an ancient tradition, you are keeping it alive. It's one of the problems that we see in parallel in our company. Many people, in terms of Western opera, think that it is basically dead, that all we do is perform again and again and again the music of typically elderly white men who died 142 years ago. And if all we are doing is running a museum, if all we are doing is operating a mausoleum, our art has no future. It's already died. We're just worshiping ghosts. If, on the other hand, as you folks are doing with Prop Master's Dream, you are advising the world that Cantonese opera is alive and well, and it is giving birth. It is giving birth to new stories, to new people, to new voices, to a new point of view. And in that very act and fact of giving birth to the next generation, you are ensuring that its power and its beauty will long outlive any of us. And I think that's wonderful. And I do find that a parallel between those of us who practice, if you will, Western opera, and those of our friends who practice, in this instance, Cantonese opera. We're both in the same boat. We need to attract young people. We need to tell new stories. They need to be founded in a great art, but they need to find new eloquence in the telling of these stories. And that you are able to connect, in the instance that you've chosen, the actual story, the history of one man in this neighborhood years ago, who lived and did work, and whose work now and whose name now is being revived. This is wonderful. So we at City Opera are very happy to help any old way we can. It's just a great promise, and it's a great perspective. And I think especially because in the worst of ways, since COVID gave an excuse to bigots and racists of the Donald Trump sort to talk about the China virus and to attribute it to a people and not to the organism that is a virus, to attribute it to you and people of Chinese descent, of Asian descent, anywhere. Racists don't care. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, it doesn't matter to them. They're just racists. We have to contest this. And we have to say, no, not in our names, not in our time, not in our city. No, it's not allowed. That's not Vancouver, that's not Canada. And one of the ways I think we do this in such a terrible time when, you know better than I, elderly Chinese women are being knocked to the ground by big burly bigots, is to produce something better, something beautiful, something real and true and welcome, something that is yours and thus ours. And this is what you are doing in the new work you are now bringing to life and to new life and to new purpose. And I've always, when I've encountered in my life, witnessed, I've never had the personal experience of it, but when I've witnessed bigots, I have seen more than once or twice or 10 times that one of the ways to shut them up, one of the ways to defeat them, is by showing the better world and the better future and the better options, because even bigots cannot live on a steady diet of hate. They can't. Ultimately, it destroys them. And one of the unique powers and signatures of musical art, I think, is to reach into the camp of people who are struggling, who have perhaps sometimes terrible ideas and terrible attitudes and awful prejudices, and invite them to fall in love with one of our characters, one of your characters. When City Opera did a work called Missing, about missing and murdered Aboriginal women, it's so far had 22 performances. We've given it in Vancouver, in Victoria, in Prince George, and in Regina. When the plague lifts, we'll continue it on tour to Winnipeg, Toronto, and Ottawa. We announced just a week ago that it will be produced in Anchorage, Alaska, which has a very large Indigenous population. And when we were looking at the ghastly phenomenon of missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls, a fact of life in our country, a fact of death in our country, one of the things that we hit on very early was to say to those who more or less take the view, well, they brought it on themselves. Look at the way they live. They did it to themselves. It's their fault. Why should I care? And what we did, what Marie Clements, our librettist, did, was tell a story about a young Aboriginal woman who, by the end of the show, we have all fallen in love with. And when she is taken from us in our show, we weep because she became one of us. She became one of the audience. She became someone we would all love. Art and music and opera have this power. And you are asserting this power in the story you're telling. And it is a great ambition and a great obligation to do it faithfully and truly and with devotion and enormous care. And at City Opera, we too admire that very, very much, in part because we know how hard it is to do a new opera. It's really hard. Even Mozart had flops, you know? So we're all in the same boat, and we're very happy to be sharing a boat with you guys and finding the right direction and measuring the wind and all those other corny old metaphors. So hooray for you. I'm very, very glad you're doing this. You have a timely story to tell. And when you get it right, my guess is you will find audiences that you have never had before coming to hear a story they have never been told before. But someone told them, I think you should go to this new show. It's really pretty good. I learned stuff there and I felt stuff there. So hooray for you.
Thank you so much.
That's my pitch. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. It's very encouraging. Rosa, maybe you can summarize in Cantonese.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
okay.
I didn't think about that at all. Sorry.
Just a couple of the key points. Yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't really take any notes at all. 剛才Dr. Barbara 話咧，即係佢覺得我哋做呢一個新派粵劇咧好有意思，因為咧依家社會上咧，自從呢個疫情啊，同埋自從美國嗰個前任總統Trump 啊，搞到即係變啲人對於中國人啊同埋亞洲人咧有十分歧視。咁我哋做呢一個即係呢個粵劇咧，即係變咗可以等啲人認識多啲真正嘅我哋嘅傳統啊，即係唔係好似佢哋講得咁差嘅。即係唔係根本佢哋講嗰啲係大話嚟嘅，咁同埋咧佢咧就佢哋City Opera 咧亦都做即係揾人寫咗好多劇本新嘅歌劇，咁佢哋有一個歌劇咧裡面咧就係講一個原住民嘅女人係missing 即係唔見咗啊！其實我哋都知道啦，喺加拿大咧係好多原住民嘅婦女啊係唔見咗嘅，咁佢哋寫咗呢個劇本咧係得到好多人嘅支持同埋即係好有好歡迎啊！咁佢哋同埋咧 City Opera 咧就做咗即係寫咗好多不同嘅劇本嘅，咁咧我哋燕鳳鳴咧就係 希望我哋呢個係我哋第一個劇本啦，就希望Dr. Barbara 咧多啲指點我哋。Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Barbara.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite one more guest, a musician and composer that we have just started conversations with to collaborate on, Peter Tam. Peter, we're curious what your thoughts are. Maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit, and what are your first impressions of what you saw today?
Mute. Hello.
We can hear you.
Thanks for inviting me. Wow, it's I've seen Chinese opera when I was 6 years old, because that's when I immigrated to Canada from Hong Kong. So these are very old memories that I haven't seen for a long time, and it brought back memories. It's never gone away. So it's but there's a whole new, way. My appreciation with it is completely different, and I think this is something that like Dr. Barbara said about a lot of these old traditions are dying, and I think a new look of it and a whole new revitalization is important. So 如果用廣東話講就係我哋呢啲中國嘅戲劇咧，有好多我細個嗰陣時好細6、7歲嗰陣時聽過，一路都未聽過，人至到而家。我即係好有好個我喺個心力裏邊，即係咁，我可以感覺到有好多嘢咧，我係開始記得翻晒，所以我好looking forward to 嚟幫助大家去做呢個戲劇。我嘅工作咧係音樂家。係 jazz， 所以或者可以加一啲我用英文。So I'm happy to get involved and contribute some jazz compositions, and wherever needed music, I can hopefully do some contribution. Because this is something that is sort of in the realm of a lot of things that I'm doing. I'm also involved with a lot of Indigenous community, aware of a lot of things that are happening in the world today. 即係今日個世界呢啲有好多嘅嘢，種族歧視啊，我哋嘅First Nation 嘅人啊，咁樣係對有好多人即係。冇咁樣嘅認識，佢唔知道有咁樣嘅事啊。So it's important for us to put these stories out there, and stories are important. Story tells a lot of things, and it's entertaining. So this is something completely new that I'm just I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be wonderful.
May I translate it into Cantonese? Peter 咧就係香港移民嚟嘅。How old were you, Peter, when you came?
7歲。
7歲嚟加拿大溫哥華，加拿大。咁佢咧就係一個音樂家，就係鋼琴家，同埋但係咧佢就又對於爵士音樂好有認識，就係佢嘅即係佢對爵士音樂好有認識啦，或者係大部分係爵士音樂啦。咁同埋咧，佢認識好多原住民，同好多原住民哋有交流啊，同埋佢哋有時佢同佢哋係咪一齊 drumming 啊 ？Peter
係啊，我好多時同佢哋一齊打鼓。係
啦，咁佢同佢哋認識好多原住民，同埋有交流嘅佢哋藝術方面。咁我哋今次咧就好榮幸咧邀請到阿 Peter 嚟幫我哋手搞呢個我哋嘅叫做新派粵劇啦。其實真係新派嘅，我諗從未有人做過呢一種粵劇，同埋咧係因為係講我哋溫哥華加拿大原住民一個原住民嘅阿華叔，咁我就希望喺呢個 呢個粵劇裏面唔係真係傳統嘅粵劇，全部唱晒我哋嗰啲二黃啊、慢板啊、中板啊嗰啲。我係希望可以咧，阿 Peter 幫我哋加啲元素，爵士音樂元素啊，或者佢有咩 inspiration 咧，佢有咩 idea， 佢可以中意，佢可以提議俾我哋點樣做法。因為我咧就係唔識嘅，我淨係識粵曲，彈琴識少少啦嚇。但係咧就我希望我哋喺我哋呢個粵劇裏面都加多啲新元素落去，咁同埋再加啲原住民嘅 drumming 鼓，咁啊希望可以Peter 可以幫到我哋啦。Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we can open it up for questions. We have just a few minutes left. Feel free to drop some questions in the chat. I think we did get one question here about whether the performers back in the day were all male, or were they male and female? That's a really good question. Actually, before the 20th century, they were all male. And in the Qing dynasty, there was an ordinance passed that only men could perform on stage. And so the men actually learned how to play the female roles very well. But in the after the fall of the Qing dynasty and the opening up of China to new ideas, new political movements, the women's movement, women started to perform. So that was around 1910s, 1920s, more and more women came in. So by the time our story takes place, both men and women are in the opera.
我哋有個觀眾提出咧，去問係咪所有嘅即係以前嘅演員咧係都係男扮女啦？男旦啊咁，其實阿 April 話咧就係喺清朝嗰時咧就係曾經清朝落過一個例話唔準女人做戲嘅，咁到1910年左右咧，清朝完咗之後，民國時候咧就開始就有女人扮花旦啦，做花旦啦，咁之後咧就一路係咁沿住落去啦。但係到我哋近期咧喺香港咧，即係近期又有變咗又有女人扮生咯喎。即係女人做男角啦，咁呢啲即係有特別嘅 development 咯，係 OK。
Another question is, when do you plan to premiere the production and at what venue or location? Well, I don't think we have a firm date yet, but we're looking at early 2023. Is that right, Rosa?
For the performance?
Yeah,
I hope so. Yeah, but we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of things we have to ask Dr. Barbara to help us. We need advice from him. This is my first time, so I don't know. Yeah, we hope 2023.
We do need support, so this might be a good time to say vancanopera.com. I put it in the chat. If you'd like to support us, if you like this programming that you've been coming to, you can send us a little gift there to support this work. Or if it's not financial, you can get in touch. We're always looking for volunteers, for people to get involved, to have the community more engaged. A question about the pictures. Are they from the Chung collection? Yes, they are. They're in the UBC Rare Books and Special Collection, Chung collection. So anybody can go there and look at them. And you can actually open the envelope and handle them yourself with the white gloves.
我哋因為我哋燕鳳鳴粵劇團咧，好多節目咧都係免費嘅。咁尤其是呢一個道具大師的尋根夢咧，係一個好大，對我哋嚟講係一個好大嘅 project。所以咧就希望大家鼎力支持，等我哋可以繼續發展落去。多謝。如果你哋想捐款俾我哋咧，可以去我哋嘅網頁 www.vancanopera.com。咁你哋咧可以捐款俾我哋，我哋會寄一個報稅單俾你嘅。多謝。
So we just have a couple more minutes left, and I'd like to invite Savannah back to give us some closing remarks. And Savannah, we love the Heart of the City Festival. We're so happy to be a part of it. And congratulations for the 18th year of the event. And thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you so much for having interwoven yourselves with the whole history of the festival. I was really moved by the excerpt that you showed. I want to hear how that story unfolds, what happens. I found myself very much caring for the son and his adopted mother. I wondered a lot as I was watching, is this going to be biography, or is this dream world? And is it going to be the kind of history of his life, or does he encounter his Indigenous family in some way in his dreams? Does he die? Is this a tragedy as it unfolds, or is there a feeling of some kind of encounter, or that takes place? And I found myself wondering a lot about what kind of Indigenous presence might there be in this story that you're telling and that you're weaving together, in terms of either musical content or the kind of characters, something. What kind of advice might you need to be going on that journey? And I wondered a lot about the baby that was abandoned, and where exactly it was abandoned, what it was wearing when it was abandoned, and what indications, if anything, there might have been around the parents, and the tragedy of that. And I also found myself wondering, is there an element when you're embarking on a story like this, with these ancient roots that you're carrying into the future, is there a place where there is some kind of ceremonial closure needed, potentially, with the story that's being carried forward and the ancestors, the people in that story? And is this any kind of a closure ceremony from an Indigenous tradition, Chinese Canadian? Is there a meeting that needs to take place that is part of the foundation of the relationship building and the story as well, that's kind of paralleling the journey? So it was something around, where does the cultural work, the narrative work, and the narrative work, and as a place, I guess, that meeting point between story, culture, cultural practice, living practice at the time and place that we're living in right now. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for this very brave journey. We're really looking forward to its unfolding. If there's any way that we can help, support or help contribute to phases of the journey, we're totally interested. We think it's genre-breaking work that you're doing, and it's really necessary stories that you're bringing forward. And I grew to care about this gentleman very much in the retelling. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to encourage everyone to take a look at what's happening at the festival in the next few days. There's a wealth of cultural activities that you could see. There's cultural sharings that are happening at the Firehall Arts Center. There's a hashtag What Now happening at the Russian Hall. There's the Honoring Our Grandmothers Healing Journey launch that's happening in Oppenheimer Park. Ceremony and art, etc., woven together. Really exciting work that is taking place. So I encourage everyone to check it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Savannah. Those are all questions on our mind as well. We haven't had a chance to talk more about our engagement with Indigenous content in this presentation, but we are reaching out to community members. Victor Guerin, a Musqueam elder and teacher, is helping us with this project, and we want to proceed very carefully. We understand how much care and cultural sensitivity and respect and understanding is required to really birth this kind of story. And so that's why we're also hesitant to announce a final completion date, because all of those things take time to answer those types of questions and to build the type of relationships we would like to build in sharing the story. But we do see it as a way to build some bridges between our communities and to hear more stories from people. And we do realize that maybe this production will change dramatically as we move forward. So we're very open to all of that. Yeah, but thank you for your thoughts. They're very encouraging and very helpful.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Dr. Barbara. And thank you, Peter.
Yes, and thank you to everyone who came today. We're out of time now, but feel free to email us or send us a message here in the chat before we close, and look out for our next event. We'll be back with more.
多謝各位今日嚟睇我哋嘅工作坊。如果你哋有咩問題咧，可以喺個聊天框度話俾我哋聽，或者寫 email 俾我哋。我嘅 email 係 vancanopera@gmail.com。喺呢度咧 ，I like to thank April, Martina and Greg, our technicians, for this wonderful workshop. And thank you all the guests for coming. Thank you.